afternoon and good morning to everyone. I'm sorry that I'm not able to be there on site with you, but welcome to my home. So I'm from Department of Geosciences and Natural Resource Management at University of Copenhagen, which is in Denmark. And I said that I would like to present about the sustainability challenges in agriculture. It's somewhat of a big topic to present on in 15 minutes. So what I'm going to do is that I'm gonna present some of my general thoughts about how to tackle some of these challenges. And I'm going to do that by through two examples that I chose because I think they represent some of the points that I would like to make. And let me be upfront with I'm not gonna present any plug and play solutions to these challenges. On the contrary, I'm mainly going to talk about difficulties and complexity. But this is a list of some of the challenges that I think are among the major challenges that agriculture is facing now and in the near future. So first of all, agriculture is expected to produce enough food for almost 10 billion people by 2050. And this has to be done under increased scarcity of land, high quality land, and increased scarcity of nutrients. It also has to be done under the impact of climate change. So on top of that, agriculture is supposed to provide livelihood for farmers. And in many countries, agriculture is also expected to drive poverty eradication and economic development. And then finally, agriculture is certainly expected to reduce its environmental footprint. At the moment, agriculture is directly responsible for about 11% of greenhouse gas emissions, and indirectly probably about 20% of greenhouse gas emissions. It's also responsible for using about 70% of the global water resources for irrigation, and agricultural expansion is leading to deforestation and biodiversity loss in many parts of the world. So big challenges that agriculture is facing, and in my opinion, these challenges, they are very much interlinked and they have to be tackled together. And this is very much what this presentation is about. So my first example is about climate change. As I think we all know, climate change is going to affect agriculture in many parts of the world through increased temperature, through changes in amounts of precipitation and precipitation patterns. There's going to be increased events of drought, flooding, and cyclones, among other things, right? So this is a map showing the projected changes in agricultural productivity in 2080 due to climate change. And I think the pattern here is scary, and it's very clear that that most of the negative impacts are going to happen in the tropical regions, while in the northern hemisphere we might even have some positive effects of climate change. This figure does not include extreme events, and it also doesn't include land losses, for example, due to sea level rise. So probably the future is actually going to look worse than this map shows or indicates. According to FAO, about 84% of the farms in the world are smaller than 2 hectares, so classified as smallholders. And also according to FAO, these smallholders produce about 70 to 80% of the food in the world. These smallholders are mainly located in Asia and the Pacific, and definitely mainly located in tropical areas. So this, combined with the previous map, means that these smallholders that are producing a lot of the world's, or most of the world's food, are likely to be impacted very much or very negative by climate change in the future, probably already now, right? So I will argue that in the face of accelerated climate change, it's more important than ever before to develop solutions for these smallholder farmers, which is difficult because smallholder farms are known for being extremely diverse. There's a high complexity, and climate change is only one of many challenges that smallholder farmers are facing. So there is no one-size-fits-all solution to these challenges. Even within Thailand, a farming system that works one place in Thailand may not work at all in another place in Thailand. So we really have to acknowledge this complexity and work towards finding context-specific solutions. And I would argue that we need portfolio-based solutions, taking local constraints and opportunities into consideration. And when I say portfolio-based solutions, I mean something like this, like a combination of different types of solutions, actions and support systems, ranging from the very local level, from field level, and all the way to international level. So with field level, household level, national level, and international level actions as a part of this portfolio. Next example is related to livestock. So as I think we all know, the meat production in the world is growing. It has actually tripled. The meat production in the world has tripled over the last 50 years, very much because of increased consumption and production in Asia. This has very, very big environmental implications. So greenhouse gas emissions from livestock represents almost 15% of all anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions, and cattle alone are responsible for 65 of these 15%. So that's a very big share that can be ascribed to livestock alone. On top of that, livestock, or about 60% of the world's agricultural land is being used for grazing, for livestock grazing, and we know that a lot of this land is directly related to deforestation. I think that we are all familiar with these scary photos from the Amazon, where forest is being cleared for cattle grazing. This figure shows how resource intensive beef production is. So this the green shade, or the green bars in this figure, shows how much land it takes to produce 1 million of calories of these different products here on the y-axis, and the yellow or orange bars shows the associated greenhouse gas emissions. And the picture is pretty clear here, right? Beef production is by far the most resource intensive product, followed by sheep and goat meat, but the production of sheep and goat meat is so small, so it doesn't really matter in the big picture. Beef is much more important. This figure is clear, but it doesn't even include the indirect land use changes associated with the meat production. So the picture is actually more complex than this and worse. So by indirect land use changes, an example is what happens when the demand for pork meat in China, for example, increases, and the EU, and especially Denmark, where I come from, responds by increasing the pig production to export it to China. We like to feed the pigs here with soy that is largely imported from Argentina and Brazil, where we know that it is associated with large-scale deforestation. So that's an indirect land use change associated with meat production. Then we also have another kind of land use change associated with meat that is even more tricky to address, and that is leakage. So leakage, I have an example from Thailand. So in Thailand, the livestock industry is growing, especially the chicken and pork production in Thailand is growing. In Thailand, the pork and chicken diet very much consists of maize, and over the last decade, a lot of this maize has been produced in the northern uplands of Thailand. Then, quite recently, some years ago, these maize production systems in the north started to get a lot of attention due to the environmental impacts. And farmers in the north are, for example, being blamed for deforestation to grow maize. So this over the last few years, this has led to a lot of pressure on the farmers, especially in the northern uplands, to stop growing maize, which they have to a large extent. But this has left a maize deficit. So the livestock in Thailand still has to eat, but there's not enough domestic maize. So the agribusiness companies have to find an alternative source of feed. Part of this is being covered by increasing the import of wheat, for example, from Argentina, also from US, Ukraine, and Australia. And then there are also reports of increased imports of maize from the neighboring countries, especially from Myanmar, that we know has a lot of forest. So we can ask ourselves, what is going on in Myanmar? What are the environmental outcomes of this leakage, of this displacement of land use to Myanmar, maybe to Laos and Cambodia too? Another issue that we can ask in relation to sustainability is, what are the effects within Thailand? How are the effects on the social and economic sustainability of the farmers in northern Thailand or in other parts of the uplands? So that is complex to address. One thing that I would argue this is needed, though, to be sure to be able to feed the world, basically, in the future, is that we need to reduce the meat consumption, which means that we need to change diets in some places of the world. It's pretty clear on this map that probably we don't have to change diets everywhere in the world, right? There are some certain places where it's more important than in other places. This is a very difficult task because in many countries it's seen as a part of the culture to eat meat. So it requires deep behavioral changes that are challenging. It is taking place in some places already, but I would argue it's going too slow. So probably we would need, or we need some policies to make people change their diets away from meat for sustainability reasons. Okay, so what is the role of higher education in all this? Well, I would argue that the role of higher education is very important. These problems are extremely complex, and we need holistic approaches. So we have to step back and consider the food system as a whole and understand how the components are interacting and how they are unrelating to each other, and what the long-term and immediate impacts of sustainability related intentions are on the entire system. This is very much an academic task, I would argue, and therefore a part of academic education. I would also argue that the time for narrow monodisciplinary approaches is past. We need contributions from many different disciplines, but we also need interdisciplinary approaches to tackle all these challenges, which means that we have to educate people to work together across disciplines to find solutions together. And as a part of this, I would also argue that stakeholder engagement, working together with stakeholders, farmers, agribusinesses, policymakers, and academia is very, very crucial. So I would also like to see this incorporated in higher education. And then finally, we need change fast. So I would argue that we need to educate people to innovate and to transform the systems, which also has a role in higher education. So I would like to stop my presentation with quoting one of my good colleagues. So we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking that we used when we created them. I think that very much applies to these challenges, sustainability challenges within agriculture, and what we need education-wise in order to tackle them. That was it.
Thank you, Dr. Kochai. So let me see whether that works. Yes. Okay, so just going after Tilda's presentation about the challenges that are linked with sustainability of agriculture on the long run as a perspective for us from the next generation of work. I wanted to have a little bit of thinking about how we should do that and how we should contribute to, as researchers, contribute to working on the question of sustainability and contributing to the issue of measuring the contribution to sustainability and assessing the systems, the technologies, the different action that may have an impact on the sustainability of systems, so that we can lead to evaluations of what we are providing. Yeah, it's okay. Thank you. So why do we need, I think more and more, it's absolutely needed that when we discuss of sustainability, we lean on facts, on figures, on something that can be really measurable, so that it supports what is said about sustainability. Because many things are said about it, and not always really rigorously. And the concept is, or has started to be a kind of what I call a suitcase concept. The suitcase is where you put everything, you shake, you put all your clothes, and then you move, you travel, and when you arrive at the hotel, you open it and you find your things. Okay, but you find exactly what you have put in it, and you do not progress in between. So I'm considering that it's more or less what has unfortunately happened to the concept of sustainability when you look at how much it is used now to qualify any kind of processes that can be related with the real sustainability, but can be quite far from the real sustainability. But the concept started to, if you look historically to it, started to be used in the end of the 80s, at the end of the last centuries, with the first one to use the terms of sustainability, development sustainability, has been Gro Harlem Brundtland, the ex-prime minister of Norway, when she did an excellent report, the first one about this question for the UN system in 1988. Then in 1992, it was the moment of the conference on environment in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, and that was a moment where the use of the concept in political negotiations among nations started to be done, and that was a progress of this use very clearly. Then the third step has been probably what was done under the climate negotiations and the climate agreements all over the time frame between the end of the 90s and the last Paris agreements in 2015, where for more than before, the concept was used into having the need of assessing a real number of actions. It was for specific aspects of sustainability, mostly climate-oriented, of course, but it was the first time that really behind the assessment of this sustainability, there were some challenges in terms of, there was money. There was money on the table, there were carbon credit to be distributed, and we had at that moment the development of a number of formal methodologies to assess and to measure what was really sustainable and what was not, what was really contributing to the sequestration of carbon or the release of greenhouse gases, and not just general nice ideas behind the concept. And finally, in 2015, that was the adoption of the agenda for sustainable development that you all know, and by the UN, that makes the concept even more popular in all political and international conferences like ours. This said sustainability has become what I call a social must, which is now absolutely compulsory in all projects that we are building as researchers, in all research that we are doing. Everything is to be a contribution to promotion of sustainable systems. And if you look at this conference, of course it is a topic, but all the presentations are devoted to that, sometimes with the capacity to really assess what is the contribution to sustainability, and sometimes less, say it like that. All systems, all policies pretend now to achieve sustainability or to be sustainable by definition. And directly that generates a number of evaluation needs to be serious, to be coherent, to be strict on what is the assessment of the production systems, the technology that we are supporting, even the public policies that are held, or even the organization of the society with regard to this challenge of sustainability. So measurement is necessary, okay, but what do you measure then? And to discuss that, needed to see what we call sustainable development, sustainable agriculture, and of course there have been plenty of definitions and so on. I'm going to the roots of where it comes from, which is the definition coming from the Heartland, the Brundtland report in 1988, that sustainable development is defined as the development that meets the needs of the present, the needs now, without compromising the ability of the future generation to meet their own needs later. When you put it like that, there are plenty of things that are said in that sentence. And if you want to measure, you have plenty of things to measure. Meet the needs of the present time. How do you measure that? And without compromising the ability of future generation to meet their own needs, that's even more a challenge, because you have to estimate what will be the future needs in maybe 50 years' time. And when this is applied to agriculture, for a number of reasons, it's even more complicated to achieve this kind of measurements, for a number of reasons that I'm going to discuss and to present now. If I press the good button, which is not the case. Oh, what I have done. Okay, so meet the present needs. The needs of the present is something that is complicated. Without compromising the ability of the future generation to meet their own needs is even more complicated. The first one is about economic and social impact. The last one about environmental impact. But both are necessary if we want to measure sustainability. A little bit more of the questions. If we need to meet the needs of the present, if we want to assess how we meet the needs of the present through a technology, a system, a policy, the first question is, okay, meet the needs of the present, but who is defining the needs? Who is choosing the level of needs that we consider that should be met by the current organization of the production? Is it the UN General Assembly that has defined the level of the needs? Of course not. They have agreed on 17 general goals, but certainly not on what should be the needs. Is it you? Is it me? Is it us, the scholars and researchers discussing sustainable system at ICSAA that are going to define what is the level of needs that should be fulfilled? The question is raised, at least. I will not bring the response. The stakeholders themselves, why not? But the stakeholders themselves, then you have to explain who among the stakeholders are defining the needs, because they don't have the same level of needs, or they don't pretend to have the same level of needs, all of them, certainly in any area. And then which needs? Is it just the food security? Is it just having enough food? Is it also having access to a number of services, clean water, minimum income per day, basic education, basic health care, and why not having also a motorbike? And when there is a road that is arriving in the village, why not having a car? Where is the limit? Compromising without compromising the ability of the future generation to meet their own needs. This is a question of the level of consumption of resources. And this raises a specific challenge on a methodological point of view, because the question is raised under which system of use we are going to consider the level of satisfaction of the future needs. The example of that is, the most known example of this kind of question is the issue of petrol, gas, petrol. When we use tractors today, or hand tractors, those are working with petrol. So the use of machinery is using a part of the stocks of petrol that are on the planet. And for sure, because of that, it is not sustainable, because the next generation will have less petrol to use for their own tractors. You can say it like that. You can also say, but no, because we don't know whether in 50 years' time we still use tractor. And maybe at that moment, or tractors with engines that are working with petrol like they are now. Maybe in 50 years' time, we will have all the tractors will be working with electricity and batteries, and petrol will not be needed. So why do we define now that keeping the same amount of petrol underground is needed as a condition of sustainability of the planet? The question is raised. Okay, same about a certain level of pollution that can be acceptable. I don't go into the details about that, but we could say that in any case, there is a certain level of pollution that definitely will exist, whatever we do or we don't do, a system or an innovation that we want to assess. And that is part of what should be accepted in the future system of use of the next generation. I go over this representation of the challenges from the environmental point of view about the resources that are used. This was presented by Anna, I think, yesterday and also this afternoon. Okay, so I jump on a few consensus, because there are many discussions about sustainability and the way of measuring, and people don't agree in many sectors and on many ideas. But there are also a number of consensus on which there is a big agreement, a large agreement. Not on much, but there is. And one of them is that sustainability should be looked according to three main families of criteria, which are the social, the economic, and the natural environment. And that the full sustainability is when you have the three together. Social challenges met, economic challenges met, and natural environmental challenges that are met too. This is the first one. The second one is that there is a consensus on the fact that sustainability is good. It's meeting the needs now. But when I meet my needs now, I want to be sure that I have enough to consume today, but also next year or the following years, without having any risk that I may not have what is necessary to meet my needs. And this is a question of the resistance to shocks that are also a parameter that is important about sustainability. So you meet the needs now, but you have to also meet the capacity to resist or to recover after a shock. And that induces the notion that can be measured also. There can be indicators for measuring that, the resistance of systems and the resilience of systems, sometimes presented as opposite to each other, which is not the case. Resistance is how much your system is going to face the risk and not be too much affected by the risks, while resilience is the time, which is the other dimension, the time that your system is going to take to recover to the initial stage. Okay, there are two different kinds of scale of sustainability that can be measured. You can try to measure the sustainability at an aggregate level. For example, one country, that's the economy of one country is sustainable or not. Bhutan is more sustainable than China, or at Paris conference on climate, you have this country that is doing more than another country. These kind of aggregates are needed. There are some methodologies about that also. I'm not detailing this because I've seen that most of the presentations here in this conference are addressing what is being done at farm level, farming systems, set of technologies, and this is what is presented. And indeed, it can be the sustainable character of that can be presented and can be measured or should be measured so that we really know whether we are or we are not going towards more sustainability or not. Very briefly, choose the indicators. We therefore need a number of indicators. And that's something that is important. It should be a set of indicators, certainly not a single one. Why? Because in the issue that we are addressing, the interactions are quite important between the factors. The interaction between the social, the economic, and the environmental is key. But even in each of them, you will have several parameters that will be impacted on behalf of the sustainability. And there are big interactions between them, and the interaction is sometimes and very often actually more important than the single factor direct effect, which leads to develop a number of integrative indexes that can bring together different elementary indicators and their interaction. And in PSI, we have been doing that about soil, carbon, fertility, when we did that module in Conken, if I do remember well. You see, as an indicator of several evolutions of the soils. That could be also in the social or economic factors. Okay, I jump over the list of the criteria that can be considered for environmental sustainability to highlight that there are two characters that seems to me quite important from the methodological point of view when measuring sustainability. One is to be site-specific, because the impact of the system on the use of the resources are located on specific sites, and we have to clearly assess the boundaries of the sites that are being relevant for the measures. And additional means that what we are looking at is, that difference between the impact of the future, the project activity, the future technologies that is being assessed, and the current situation when it continues to happen, knowing that this baseline, the current situation, is not just what is the case now, because it's going to change if nothing happens. So it's a dynamic process. And the measurement that we should do is just the difference between the two there. Okay, system perspective is compulsory, opposed to analytical. And because we are dealing with several factors in interaction, obviously, there is no other way than considering systems, so that you can avoid the leakages between the different parts and different components of the system. One example, that Tilde has started to give is about organic production. Tilde talked about the cattle production, but organic production, if you consider organic production, everybody is saying organic production is fantastic, it's sustainable, it's blah, 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 blah. It's more sustainable than conventional because it does not use chemical fertilizers, but animal manure. Okay, doesn't use chemical fertilizer, but animal manure. But when you consider that the cattle that is producing the manure is fed with Brazilian soybeans, you can consider that the deforestation of Amazonia that is allowing the production of soybeans in Brazil is directly allowing the organic agriculture in Songkhla province. So, in other words, it's thanks to the deforestation of Amazonia that you are producing organic agriculture here in Songkhla. So think of that when you eat your organic food. Okay, leakages. Jump over that. Leakages are another issue for measuring. Is that you can have an impact, positive impact of a project on a certain scale, at a certain level of your environment, but it's just at the cost of additional effects or impacts that are done elsewhere outside the boundaries of the project that you are assessing. And that is, of course, that should be, of course, taken into consideration in the measures. So to conclude, looking for the proof, that was the title of the presentation, The Challenge of Measuring Sustainability and Resilience. At the end of the presentation, there are very bad news, I have to say. And the very bad news is that agricultural systems do not exist. If you consider everything, if you consider all parameters, you'll probably never meet any agricultural system that you will assess, completely assessed with taking into consideration all the parameters of the system, plus all the leakages that can exist. You will not find any system that is sustainable. Okay, but there are also good news. And the good news is that if there is no system that is sustainable, there are positive impacts on systems. And there are systems that can change over more sustainability or less leakages. And that justifies by itself that these measures are done, that you can demonstrate them, these impacts, these positive impacts, measure them, communicate of them, and finally extend them. And that is going to be the topic of my next colleague, Petra Sharapkova, just after me. Thank you very much for your attention.
As you know, the topic is regarding like working in agriculture or interest of young people to work in agriculture, and especially the case in Thailand. And this presentation was prepared by me together with Olga Leuner, however, with the whole team, research team, which we have here at the Faculty of Tropical Agri-Sciences, Capacity Building and Agriculture Development, so all of my colleagues. And we like within the different projects, like the PSI project, Ask Asia project, and Simple project, we usually have several key questions. And the first one was if the students are interested in to work in agriculture, what are the expectations by the employers, and what are the experiences by the alumni or the graduates who finished their agriculture studies. And today it was several times mentioned how the agriculture is important, and that is the crucial part of the economy. Usually, or in many countries, is also the single biggest employer. And however, everyone knows that the agriculture is important. But the situation worldwide is that the interest of young people to work in this agriculture sector, or also to study agriculture studies, is decreasing. So therefore, it's well known that also there is the lack, or there is of the agriculture professionals, and there is the high demand for them. And if we take the example of Thailand, currently the employment in agriculture is around 40%, is decreasing, like comparing the previous years, or like 10, 20 years ago. However, there is also still the lack of the professionals, and quite often is mentioned that the agriculture is not so attractive sector because the parents think that there is the hard work, and that there are no sufficient profits. And if you look to data, then it means that if you look at the higher education or at the university agriculture or university degree, then the students enrollment is around 2.5%. And usually, what are I mean, in agriculture-oriented universities. And among the main challenges which are mentioned by the other authors is the low level of English and the absence of critical thinking skills. And so this is like as the introduction. And within our different studies, especially this study was done within the PSI project, was that we would like to know what are the motivation of the students to choosing the agriculture studies, and what are their job perception. This study was done by one of my master student, David Zeman, who presented, by the way, yesterday here at this conference. And he did a study at all 4 universities included in PSI project. There was the online questionnaire survey done in 2019, and there was like 460 respondents. And the result was regarding the why they are motivated to work in agriculture. And you can see the differences also among the different universities, especially depending what is the location of the universities. We can see the differences between the capital cities, so from Kasetsart universities, and other 3 universities which are located in provinces. And however, the main results are that many of the students would like to have own farm, and also that there is high involvement or encouragement by the parents, because usually they encourage the students to select the agriculture studies. And also, especially in the provinces, it's evident that the parents of the students are working in agriculture. And so the results of this work there that students are interested to have own farm. Almost 50% of them, they would like to have own farm, which I would say that is a very positive result. And that the parents played a key role in motivation to students to study and work in agriculture, and almost 40% of them are working in agriculture. And also the aspect that the family has own farm, it's around 20% of the motivation factor for the students. However, still based on the results is that around 12% of the students, they would like to change their work environment and to go to another field than the agriculture. If we would like to answer to the second question, what are the expectations by the employers? So this study was done within the project Ask Asia, and we wanted to analyze or identify which competencies and skills are the most important for the employers. So this was done by semi-structured interviews with the employers. The study was done in different countries, in Cambodia, China, Indonesia, Vietnam, Mongolia, and Thailand as well. And it was done based on the interviews together with focus group discussions. And if we compare the results, so the main skills and competencies according to the employers are the responsibility, time management, and capacity to work in team. So these are the main three expectations or the competencies which the employers expect from the graduates. So for them, these three are the most important. We can have a look that there was the difference also if the employers are working in private or public sector. So if you look to the differences in private sector and other skills which they're appreciated, there are also the computer skills, self-confidence, and ability to interact with other cultures. And if you look to public sector, it was mentioned also that the appreciation goes to creativity or ability to apply knowledge in practice, and also like to resolve the problems. And the two main aspects that are mentioned quite often by the employers during the interviews. The first one, that they can see that the graduates, they usually have a low level of ability to apply their knowledge which they gain during their studies in practice. And also what was mentioned several times, it was the level of English. So this is a quite important aspect. And if we look to the point of view of alumni or graduates, how they consider which competencies and skills are important for their employers. So it was the study done among Erasmus Mundus alumni, so the students who studied in Europe and they came back to their home country. So the sample size was around 350 alumni. And also it was done through the some focus group discussions, and also within the simple project, we did personal interviews with alumni. And if you look what they consider, here in this graph, we can see the difference. What the green lines are the skills and competencies which are required by alumni according to the employers. Then the red lines are the skills and competencies which alumni thinks that are important. And then the blue ones are the skills which they're developed during their studies abroad. So if we look because we already mentioned the three main skills and competencies like the responsibility, time management, and to work in team, which was required by the employers. And if you look to the alumni, for them, it means the red lines. Also, the most important aspects are also the responsibility. However, it's also the working in teams. and then oral and written communication skills. So this is what the alumni, after they working, they consider as important aspect. So if you look to the experiences by the alumni, based on the research, these 87% working graduates, they declare that they are satisfied with their current job position at a Thai labor market and the current situation. So I think that this is quite positive news and or positive result. Also, if we look to the factors which they consider, which they're influencing their employability, so definitely it was English or the language skills, but mainly English. Then also the experience from abroad, then technical know-how and computer skills, and also the research skills and the capacity for analysis and synthesis. So I think that these are really important aspects, and it's quite evident based on our experience also in teaching during the modules, that the capacity for analysis and synthesis, it's a very key aspect which is needed to improve at the students level, as we could see during the working in teams with them. And also the horizontal skills and competencies which they're considered by the alumni are the responsibility, adaptability to the new environment, capacity to work in teams, and also the communication skills. So this is what the alumni and graduates mentioned. And the aspect which was really several times mentioned was that usually they like the opportunities for doing the internships. So they're the practical experience, which is very important for their employer or future employers. And they also consider that as very important. And I appreciate that during the PSI project, this the students, they had this opportunity to work or to visit the different farms and to gain the experience within with their internships. And just to conclude, so based on these three aspects or the target groups confirmation, so both the students, then the employers, and then the alumni, they mention that thanks to their professional networks, they had shorter time period for job searching. Then they improved their the career advancement was like in shorter time, and after that they had the better social status thanks to the experience which they gained during the studies abroad. And I think that this can be implied also for the double degree students, or at least the study which is running now is together with was presented yesterday by one of my students who did the interviews with the double degree students of PSI, and then it was mentioned that also this experience from different university is highly appreciated by the students, and hopefully by the employers will be appreciated as well. And just to conclude, like based on these studies, the key points are that the English, it's quite or is essential tool and essential skills which is appreciated by the employer or required. Then surprisingly, the technical knowledge was not, or the skills was not a priority or the only one priority. However, mainly the horizontal and soft skills, as it was mentioned, the responsibility to capacity to work in teams and to ability to cooperate and in the new environment, they're very much appreciated. And also this practical experience or the internships by the students is another aspect which is demanded by the employers. So I would like to thank you for your attention, so Kopanka, and also I would like to take this opportunity to thank you not only for the listening the presentation, however for cooperation in PSI project and with all of the students, because it was really So motivating and very important for us as the teacher as well. So thank you very much for such nice cooperation.
Hello everyone. Hope everyone stay healthy. My name is Mei Fang Chen and work in Taichung University in Taiwan. I'm glad to be invited to have a talk in this conference. It was supposed to be held in Thailand. Now, due to the pandemic of COVID-19, we have to hold an internet conference. Today, I want to share my study results regarding the issue, local organic foods and consumers' purchase intention to overview. Despite it has a solid and robust evidence to draw health benefits conclusions of organic diets, due to some lifestyle and demographic factors could confound the research results. However, organic agriculture produced foods are natural foods. They do not contain artificial chemicals such as fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides, antibiotics, and genetically modified organisms. Therefore, consumers always associate organic food consumption with health benefits. Based on the belief that the organic diets can protect consumers from their exposure to pesticides, organic agriculture has become one of the most rapidly growing sectors in the food industry. Organically and locally grown products positively affect the environment, bringing to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from production. Production and consumption of locally available organic foods instead of relying conventional agricultural practices will ensure more sustainable, more delicious, and healthier foods for local residents, without sacrificing the economic benefits of local communities. For those sustainable consumers, they are not only concerned about the price and nutrition issues, but also concerned about the well-being of the small farmers, the long-term viability of the local economy, as well as environmental protection and climate change. Theory of plant behavior is an extension of the theory of result action. That explains an individual's conscious decision to engage in a behavior beyond complete volitional control. According to the TBB, behavior intention can be predicted through an individual's attitude toward the behavior, subjective norms, and perceived behavior control. The TBB offers a comprehensive framework for explaining and understanding the determinants of specific behavior, including food consumption decisions. After a series of food safety incidents, the relationship between consumer trust and food product safety have aroused broad attention worldwide. Trust relates to the degree to which consumers are willing to believe that the disclosed information from farmers and retailers is trustworthy. Trust should be incorporated into the theory of plant behavior model, which attempts are being made to solve food safety related issues. As mentioned earlier, sustainable consumers not only concern themselves, but also concern the well-being of small farmers, the long-term viability of the local economy, and environmental protection and climate change. Therefore, in addition to consumers' attitude toward local organic foods and toward consuming local organic foods, this study further measures consumers' attitude toward supporting local farmers in the attitude construct of TPB. Moreover, Consumers must rely on their trust in the food producers, retailers, and regulatory authorities to ensure that the foods are provided with good quality and the potential health risks coming from food consumption are minimized. Therefore, this study further explored the effects of consumers' trust in food retailers and the local farmers who produce them. As you can see, this is our Focus 1. Attitude has been separated into 3 kinds of attitudes, and trust has been separated into trust in retailers and trust in local farmers. This study conducted a self-administered questionnaire online survey in Taiwan in 2020. And the sample comprised of 354 valid surveys that were collated and used for data analysis. These are the constructs studied in this research. These are measurement scale sources. And we use Likert 5-point scale to measure them. Data analysis and results. The first step was to conduct a confirmatory factor analysis to assess the conversion and discriminant validity of the multiple item study constructs in the measurement scale. And the second step was to conduct regression analysis to test the proposed research framework and hypothesis. These are the descriptive statistics and correlation metrics, and the carbon alpha value are shown in the diagonal line. The results of the confirmatory factor analysis indicated good fit between the collected data and the measurement model. After the goodness of the fit of the measurement scales were confirmed, the conversion validity, composite reliability, and discriminant validity of the study constructs were further examined. As presented in this table, all standardized loading for the items measuring the same construct were significant. As you can see, t-value are greater than 1.96. Therefore, conversion validity was confirmed. In addition, the composite reliability of each study construct shown in the last column was also greater than 0.7. Finally, the cost reference statistic was significant for every 2 constructs. Therefore, discriminant validity was confirmed. Okay, this is regression analysis result. As you can see, this is model 1, this is model 2. Regression analysis results indicated that model 1 explained 34.92% variance in the purchase intention of local organic foods. The main effects of consumers' attitudes. These 3 and subjective norm and passive behavior control were all statistically significant as expected, except for attitude towards supporting local farmers. This one is non-significant. Regression analysis result indicated that model 2 explained 39.23% variance in the purchase intention of local organic foods. After consumers' trust in retailers and trust in local farmers were introduced in Model 2. However, you can see this one, trust in retailers were non-significant. Discussions. It worth it to know that consumers' attitudes towards supporting local farmers was not the determinant of purchase intention of local organic foods. After the trust in retailers and local farmers were taken into account, consumers' attitudes toward local organic foods, subjective norms, and perceived behavior control were the determinant of purchase intention of local organic foods. In addition, consumers' attitudes toward consuming local organic foods and perceived behavior control became not statistically significant. Conclusions. Regression analysis results indicated that the consumers' attitudes, including attitude toward local organic foods and toward consuming local organic foods, subjective norms, and perceived behavior control were positively related to purchase intention of local organic foods as expected. However, consumers' attitudes towards supporting local organic farmers were not statistically significant. In addition, consumers' trust in local farmers was positively related to purchase intention of local organic foods as expected, but consumers' trust in retailers was not statistically significant. Here are the practical implications. It's important to cultivate consumers' positive attitude towards supporting local farmers, so as to promote the well-being of small farmers and the long-term viability of the local economy. The sustainable goal of environmental protection and climate change mitigation also can be achieved by purchase of local organic foods. Consumers' trust in food retailers should be further promoted. By doing so, consumers' positive attitude toward consuming local organic foods and their perceived behavior control may increase too. Thank you for your listening.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Theksan Duong Sing Tham. I'm studying at Chiang Mai University and Queen of Songkla University under the PSI project. Today I will present the title of the beef cattle situation among farmers in Latapum District, Songkla Province. There's an outline today. I listen to four outline. The one in introductions of the method, result, and conclusions for the present for you. Introductions. The answer for me to the why I'm interested in beef cattle rising in Latapum District, Songkla Province. Because beef cattle rising was delivered to the Thailand farmer 792,000 households. The activity made with the plantations such as rice planting, rubber planting, another one, and make the income farmer. The beef cattle make the $2.41 billion. The data from by the Office of Agricultural Economy in Thailand, and the beef cattle production was the 1.1 million cow, and increased in Thailand. The data increased 7.5% per year. The beef cattle, Thai government under the project and the policy through the Thailand Department of Livestock Development has to operate project under government policy, such as extend the farmer through the increase the product in the farm. This purpose for the study, I will propose the study beef cattle situation among farmers in Latapum District, Songkhla Province. And the methodology, that's I use to correct the data between January and February in 2020. I used the set the quota sampling size in 100 sampling and use the sampling random method for the select the sampling size and use the interview schedule for collect the data. That the result for I collect the data 3 sections. These are personal characteristics, socio-economic and characteristic of farm beef cattle farm. The result found that the farmer average beef cattle farmer is 50.9 years old. The standard of 3 education level was the high school, because in the area Latapum district, Songkhla province have the correct agricultural correct to teach the high school from the people in the area, teach the technology and and the beef cattle risings were the experienced farmer at the 8.55 years. The purpose of beef cattle, the purpose farmer rising was the part-time job and labor in the farm 1.87 people who use the labor in this household. And in the year 2020, the beef cattle farmer average income by beef cattle rising by the $1,600 US. The average investment of the 43.9 US dollar per cow, and use freelance system in the daytime. The farmer rising in the grass in area for the rubber plantation, and in the night time the barrier system. That's the aim for beef cattle rising, was the saving money have if the farmer not have the money, they will sell the cattle from the middleman. And characteristic of beef cattle, normally beef cattle, normally farmer rising topically Thai native beef cattle, and was 10 to 11 cattle per farm. They use through the Napier grass and wet grass to the rising the cow, and livestock feed such as livestock and sweet corn tracks and cassava pure. And characteristics in cattle farm, the farmer 58% plant cattle by the lead breeding method and artificial instrument, and sold from middlemen and use the eye and satisfaction to make the price of beef cattle. The main problem in the area is the disease because in the area is in the season the rain and the disease for the important disease the foot and mouth disease. In the conclusions, there was the farmer was the part-time job living the serving and focus on local product. This local product is sell on red meat, no margarine in the fat in the muscle for the consumption for the local consumption. Local consumption in this area in the Muslim consumption and they make and reserve raw food by use the agricultural byproduct to feed. And main problem in the area was the foot and mouth disease. Normally contrast. Improving farmer will extend knowledge and about disease prevention and making expansion, both domestically and abroad. I want to show the picture on my field. I attended the cow or the correct the data. Thank you for attention.
Good morning. My name is Piano Chunsin. I am student of Agricultural System Management, Faculty of Agriculture, Chiang Mai University. It's a pleasure to have me in the oral presentation today. I will talk about alternative farming on the highland and liberal access of small-scale farmers in Hanoi District, Nan Province. Majority of land in Nan Province are upland and highland area. Farmers more than 60% are practice monoculture with a rain-fed agriculture. Maize is a dominant crop, so maize planted area of Nanoi District have higher and more than 90,000 rice from 664 approximately right. That is the second largest in Nan Province. Deforestation area caused the flash flooding, droughts, and heavy storm. Moreover, farmers have been facing food insecurities, insufficiency and crime that which involve the low price, pest and disease, social pressure, and also technology adoptions. For my research questions, how farmers do alternative farming on the highlands, and why some farmers cannot success on the sustainable agriculture? It will lead to my objectives. The first one is to study farm type on the highland of Nanoi District, Nan Province, and analyze the laboral assets. In my research used a tool framework to categorize farm type of alternative farming on the highland. For example, Mackham and Morcon 1983 said they are basically two major farm operating objective and household goal: profit maximization or market-oriented farm and household substance-oriented farm. Jisungwan in 2001 also explained that sustainable agriculture system in Thailand had two approaches that are commercial large-scale production and part commercial productions. Farm system in Thailand have various farm types, which include subsistence agriculture, commercial agriculture, agroforestry, intensification agriculture, pesticide-free agriculture, new theory agriculture, natural farming and organic farming from DOAE 2018. Why is livelihood access so important? How we reduce economic inequality and poverty? build the sustainable livelihood framework, it starts from the investigator vulnerability context and the 5 assets, which are human capital, social capitals, natural capital, financial capital, and physical capital, to access the policy institution that are the structure and process to contribute the livelihood strategy to achieve the livelihood outcomes. Then the livelihood outcome to come to reduce their vulnerability, shifting for the better, boosting self-worth, empowering people's family and communities. My research methods. There are 7 sub-districts in Hanoi district Nan province. There are 222 samples from purposive samplings. Next, the data collection. I start from the informal interviews, focus group discussions, structured individual questionnaire. Then the data analysis. What are of qualitative analysis, explanation of farm typology and component of SLF. For the quantitative analysis, there are an average, standard deviation, and 5-point of Likert scale. Okay, now please take a look at the farm typology. From those 222 samples that were classified into the 3 farm types are categorized by household goals and kind of reducing maize production. The first one, there are 56 samples, which is the the large commercial family farm, which has maize and rubber trees. Next, 153 samples, which is the part commercial family farm, which involve the maize, rubber tree, and integrated farming, and it represented by T2. The last group of samples, 13 samples. Also, the part commercial family farm is only integrated farming, and it is represented by T3s. Dot farm of maize and rubber tree located on the rainfed agriculture, but some maize planted area of T2 located on the irrigation area. But T2 have some planted area on the community area, and T3 also in the community area and irrigation system. Of course, they have different household goals, which T1 is mainly profit, and T2 and T3 for food and incomes. Those pictures are the, for example, of the alternative farming system on the highland. Okay. The household character of T farm system. Farmers of Hanoi district Nan province are small-scale farmers, so the household members are approximately about 4 people. The average of age is only 48 years old. They have the same average of education was primary school. The average of agricultural plots are 3 plots, and if we look at the agricultural area, T1 has the most of planted area. Okay, let's comparison of the different farm type on the natural asset. The natural assets involve soil, water, climate, and biodiversity that include the ecosystem surface from the community forest. Farmers of 3 farm types have good accessibility of natural assets. Cropping system of 3 farm types rely on the precipitation and natural growing up. Thus, the soil, fertility, and climate change was appropriate to them. 3 farm type system, they can access the local irrigation system, but T3 need more sufficient water to increase seasonal vegetable and livestock farming system. Although T1 and T2 seem to lack of good insecurity, but they have good of natural resources such as herbs, animals, and others. Okay. Comparison of different farm type on human assets. The human assets involve the skill, knowledge, experience, labor, and leaderships. The level of human assets depend on the personal ability and the accessibility of agricultural extension services. RT farm type have approximately of human assets, but T2 is better than others. Because of different cropping system that T2 has better human assets. Farmers opt to focus on various crops and livestock. They also have a rotational farm, while T3 were people who just beginning of the livestock. They have short experience. T2 access more local farm wisdom and adopt new technology easier. That's why they have better experience than others. For the health, farmers have been reducing chemical fertilizer, pesticide, and insecticide, so they have a good health. However, the result about the agricultural extension service seem to have a problem because they have low accesses. So I'm remark at the red colors. Let's comparison of the different farm type on social asset that involve the good collaboration and communities. Farmer of three farm type access the agricultural extension service and have successful farmer groups. But they usually have a problem from group management which discontinue operations. Moreover, long distance was an obstacle to join those activities. That the results show they have a low accessibility of social assets. However, if that activity were a culture and their tradition, people always pay attention. Okay. T1 was not need a labor sharing, while T2 and T3 have strong culture about of sharing labor, especially in right growing seasons. For the financial assets, the financial asset describe the potential of financial capital to begin the alternative farming. Three farm types have poor accessibility of financial assets. Farmers of tree farm type have scarcely saving money because of low accessing financial institution and source of investment. All farm income will generate after finish their work in farm. T1 have insufficient farm income because they have been facing the price risks from maize price risks. Then T2 and T3 have sufficient farm income because the integrated farming also provide a good dispersion income, especially seasonal vegetables that provide a monthly income. Moreover, if we look at the picture of market distribution, we will see T1 maize and rubber tree can sell through the middleman, and T2 and T3 can access a better market distribution. They can access modern trades such as Top supermarket and Big C supermarket. However, an affection from the low accessibility of social assets that influence to the poor accessibility of the agricultural input substitution that farmers have high cost investment. For the comparison of the last asset that is physical assets that involve the infrastructure transformation and communication that need to support the farmer have self-sufficiency, and it's important to increase other assets. Although farmer can access the electric cold system in household, but it was not accessible to use in farm. Load and distance from farm to market was the obstacle. The local market of T1 it has in the community, but the farmer cannot. Farmer don't have authority to negotiate the price. Moreover, farmer of three farm type have high investment at the beginning of the starting alternative farming. The farmer did not access the telecommunication and better internet accessing. Furthermore, in the past, they used to communicate by face-to-face more than online communication and were not interested in the online marketing. To sum up, to my conclusion, comparison of 5 livelihood assets. The sustainable livelihood framework is used to understand the livelihood contribution and current problems of alternative farming in order to decrease their vulnerabilities. Although low accessibility of social assets, financial assets, physical assets were the obstacle, but the good human asset and natural asset can determine the appropriate livelihood strategy to achieve sustainability. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? I will be happy to answer them.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Loswadi Sukhum, and I'm a student of the Agriculture and Resource Economics, Kasetsat University, and under the double degree program of the Montpellier Super School. So today is very glad to present my study about the accessing of the livelihood strategy on the sustainability of natural resource utilization in peace warm ecosystem in Kreng peace warm ecosystem south of Thailand. Okay, first of all, let me introduce a little bit about what is the peace warm. So the peace warm is one of the watershed, and is contribute as we know the globally in following the UNDP or the CIFO that this area, this peace warm, they can provide the benefit in both direct and indirect services to all the society, especially for the people who living around the peace warm. And one significant important of this peace warm is they can be the carbon sink pool storage to mitigate the to sequester the GHG gas, the greenhouse gas that for the climate change, and especially for the tropical peace warm that located in the Southeast Asia, they have more 4 times faster conserve the carbon sequestration more than the other forests in the world. Okay, so as what I present that the tropical peace warm are located in Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand. In Thailand, we have the peace warm located scattered in the south, and mostly in the south, and some in the eastern. So the biggest peace warm ecosystem we call Pruto Dang. It located in the Narathiwat province, and the second largest is Kwan King peace warm ecosystem, or I use the Kwan King landscape as a technical term, and it's located in the it's covered 3 provinces as Nakhon Si Thammarat, Pathalung, and Songkhla province. Okay, what the problem statement in there is, if we see from this pie chart, you can see that in 2002 there is 60% of the land use, of the land of the peace warm ecosystem is a peace warm there, but 10 years later they have the problem of deforestation. So almost more than 10% of the total land of the peace warm is changed to another land use as agriculture or even the community settlement. How can I say, like, okay, to change the peace warm to the another land use, we have to they're being the damage by drain, fire, and they convert to the land development, which means that they disturb the ecosystem. Okay, there is rising the question of the okay, now in the KKL they're facing with the deforestation and the drain in the peace warm ecosystem, because they want to change they want to use another type of the land use to the agriculture or the community settlement. And as what I told, it's not all the peat, not all the Kwan King landscape is the peat land. There are one of the location that are the York areas in Khon Kreng in Khon Kreng landscape, we call Kreng Peacewalm ecosystem is located in Kreng subdistrict, Chawat district in Nakhon Si Thammarat province. And this area, they have many, they consist with both dense peacewalm and the disturbed peacewalms. Even though in this area, there is the number of the configuration about the land development and the rural poverty, as we, according to the national statistics and the Thailand poverty map in 2018, it illustrates that the poverty level of the people in Tambon Kreng or the Kreng subdistrict is higher. I mean, the poverty rate is higher than the other sub district. With this fact is rising the research policy and the policy issue that we read about the natural resource degradation and the poverty and poverty elevation in the rural areas. Okay, so it is the sustainable natural resource exploitation can be treated by competition between the different land use. Yes, as we see very obviously that it's about the peacewalm and the other side is about the agriculture. So it might lead to the impact on the peacewalm ecosystem that have the impact on the agriculture system themselves or threaten the whole sustainability of the whole ecosystem. Okay, I have two objectives for this study. Is the first one to understand that to access that research question, so we have to identify the livelihood strategy that existing in Kreng peacewalm ecosystem. And the second is we have to access the economic output of the natural resource use and the economic impact of each livelihood strategy on the different category of the groups. Okay, I conduct the research in Kreng, in Tambon Kreng in Nakhon Si Thammarat province, and the green one is Kreng. Okay, and I have the three different stage to conduct the research. The first is the landscape survey, second is historical survey, and the third is in-depth questionnaire survey. So following my result from the landscape survey, I found that there is the different kind of the activity system, the livelihood system scattered around the Kreng based on the different peacewalm item or peacewalm resort that created by the peacewalm, right? For example, in the middle of the village 3 and village 11, you can gathering the graduate, but other area is have less graduate than the middle one. Okay, so let's move to the result of the annual gross value added by activity, because the landscape survey can show us that the different activity that people do in the area is created by the different resort that create by the peacewalm. So it's like, how can I say it? It's like the peacewalm is the natural capital for the people. So okay, I will move to the annual gross value added that can precise us to understand why people doing the different kind of the activity. Once we talk about the annual gross value added, it means that how much that the input create the value added for the household. So I have 1, 2, 3. Okay, I have like, okay, let's say like two groups. The first group is from the gross value added from the peacewalm item creation. I have graduate cutting, handicraft, fishing, fish processing for this site, for the peacewarm activity. And the other side is oil palm, rubber plantation, paddy, and the orchard. As you will see from this as you will see from this bar chart, you will see that the peacewarm create more the annual gross value added for the in each activity. Yes, in each activity for the household more than the agriculture. Yeah, we can see that, but because in the peacewarm you don't have to invest anything. It's different from the other side, from the agriculture, that you have to invest on the investment of the seed, the pesticide, etc. Okay, so and we move to the result show about the labor productivity with the working day required. So as you will see from this, the bar chart is showing about the how much that you will gain in one day with baht per day if you do each activities. So you will see that for the side of agriculture, for example, in oil palm, you have very high labor productivity. It means that if you do oil palm, you will earn around 1,600 baht. But, and you see in the line graph, you will see that this is the number of working day required. So in this side, I mean in the in the peacewarm activity side, they require a lot of the number of working day for the household. Okay, then once I have to categorize the group or the livelihood strategy, I based on the criteria of the time allocations, which mean that the people with the assumption that the people want to have the maximize their benefit, and with the limited of the time or the time limitation. Okay, so okay, and the first, how can I say, the type 1 and type 2, they are the person who, okay, I will move to this. Okay, the type 1 and the type 2, they are the person who have very less land or very less the active the farmland per hectare. And the group of the 3 is intensifier on the agriculture, and the third group, they have the permanent income, I mean the permanent work outside of the farm or outside of the area. Okay, let me compare. So we have all 9 groups, and the first group is 1A. So it means that this group, they are mostly depend on the natural resource agriculture. Natural resource dependent. Okay, for following this graph, you can see that the most people, I mean the most population in the area, they have very less in the household income, and and very dependent on the natural resource. Natural resource exploitation is around 100% that they have the income from that source, while the people in the rich people, I mean the less poor people, they depend on the more agriculture and less in the natural resource exploitation. And this graph might be show you more clearly about the how much that the peacewarm resource play the role in the household income. So you can see that this is ordered in the among the range of the poor until the less poor. So you can see that like the most population in Kreng, and they have 100% depend on the natural resource. Okay, so the conclusion and the recommendation of my study is the result illustrate that the overall of the agriculture activity, they create higher labor productivity than the activity from the natural resource. But this might be the huge incentive that why people in the area that who have the opportunity to access the land will do more agriculture than they keep the land for natural resource.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and the principal listening to the presentation. My name is Kemini Thongma. Now I'm studying master degree at the Faculty of Natural Resources at the Prince of Songkla University, and study at Faculty of Agriculture at the Chiang Mai University. Today, the topic, the presentation about development of Chinese carpet production process for distribution in the green market of Songkhla province. That's case, the green market Faculty of Natural Resources, Prince of Songkla University. I would like to start with the introduction, objective of research, methodology, result of research, and conclusion and recommendation. Okay, I believe everyone know this vegetable. This that is we'll talk about today. This is the Chinese carpet, and Thai people call Guangdong or Sai Sim in the South language of Thailand. And the Chinese carpet is popularity plant throughout the country because easy to grow and can be planted in any season, and is the important to economic and important the economy of country, and can consume the leaf and pilot and high the nutritional value, and can sow both in and out country, and has the potential to produce for export. However, the Chinese carpet can grow any region, but the quality of product is not same. You can see the picture is the quality of Chinese carpet in the East farm is not same, so that color or size or trace of insect. And nowadays, chemical residual in vegetable, they can found in vegetable. Taipan collect the 178 sample. We can find chemical residual in vegetable about 40%, and they collect 7 province in the Thailand, and they found the most of chemical residual in the Chinese carpet about 83%, and next the chemical residual in the Chinese kale about 25%, and next the found the standard dye vegetable have been detected for the contaminants about 26%. And in addition, the market that had been certified for production and safety standard is important to make confident and make the reliability to consumer. So if the market can know the consumer need the quality of vegetable, they can build the motivation and confidence to farmer, and that they can grow high quality of vegetable. And next, I would like to talk about objective, and I have 4 objectives. One, study of socio-economic factor and consumer opinion on demand for Chinese carpet. Next, study on the production process and problem or obstacle in the production Chinese carpet. And then study of factor affecting consumer demand for Chinese carpet. And finally, I study the guideline for the development of Chinese carpet production process for distribution in degree market in Songkhla University. And the methodology, I should start area at the agree market of Faculty of Natural Resources in Songkhla University, because this area is have the standard to management and can control farmer and can control the product and quality. And I collect data between March to May 2020. And I studied 2 points. Point one is quantitative data. I collect from 138 consumer and consumer by the Chinese carpet by purposive sampling method, and use the constructor interview and analysis. Use descriptive statistic and stepwise multiple regression. And point two, I study the qualitative data. I collect from 10 producer and distributor of the vegetable in the market, and by purposive sampling method, and use the semi-structured interview to in-depth interview, and analysis is contents analysis. And the result, the most of the respondents were 30 to 39 years old, about the 36.2%, and the responding and next the responding were about the 20 to 29 years old and 29%. And the consumer have average consumer income is 29,512 baht. This picture shows the consumer vegetable process preference. The most of consumer come to the market to buy vegetable once a week, about 28.3%. And next, consumer come to the market two or three times per week, about 21.9%. And the maximum percent of Chinese carpet is 350 baht, and maximum percent of Chinese carpet is 10 baht. Average percent is 42 baht. And the table show the most Chinese carpet consumed, show the demand for product of good quality, good price, trust the market, and promotional strategy. The average mean is the 4.05, and especially for distribution location mean 4.32, and followed by product mean 4.03. And this can see that the consumer pay more attention to the distribution location that have standard of safety, reliability, and followed by the product that are reliable as the safety and fitness and cleanliness. In the part of the farmer, the most of farmer organically grow the cabbage and the 62.5% of them are organic standard certified. It's what found the main problem affect production was disease and pest 25%, followed by production management problem about 17.19%, which affect the production of quality vegetable. And in the part of consumer, the table show the result of factor affect consumer demand for Chinese cabbage by multiple regression analysis. From this analysis, is what found that the motivation factor is influence the consumer demand for Chinese cabbage in the market. That's all the model. And the motivation factor is such as the motivation factor of product, motivation factor of price, motivation factor of price and promotion, such as the freshness, cleanliness, package size, safety, vegetable, or the price is response for the quality, and the location is easy to buy, clean, and have standardized. And the conclusion and recommendation, the most of the demand for Chinese cabbage depend on the confidence of the market distributing the product and quality of vegetable, and useful the result is can useful the development of the production system in response to consumer needs, motivation such as the freshness, cleanliness, package size, safe vegetable production, regular pesticide monitor practice, and the guideline for the development of Chinese cabbage production process for distribution in the agri-market, Prince of Songkla University, and can choose accurate knowledge for the farmer to grow safe vegetable, including technology that can control quality of vegetable according to the same standard, and in the end, get confident and respond to consumer demand for sustainable, safe food consumption. Okay, and I'm very thank you the PSI project, and thank you my advisor, Professor Dr. Bansha Sombunsuk from Prince of Songkla University, and Assistant Professor Dr. Panupan Prapatikun from Chiang Mai University. Thank you for your attention.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and all the participants. My name is Donira Khan. I am a student of Institut de Zhangzhou, Sabagro, and also the student from the Department of Agricultural and Resource Economic of Kasetsat University. And the topic for my presentation today is sustainability is dynamic assessing process of change and innovation in smallholder agriculture around Tonle Sap Lake, Cambodia. This presentation will divide into 5 parts. First, introduction. I believe everyone knows that the current food security was currently threatened by the issues such as climate change, biodiversity loss, soil degradation, groundwater depletion, and so on. And it is a big concern for the ever-growing world population now and also in the future. Therefore, the concept of sustainability has developed and widely discussed in the last few decades. And it is a very important topic in agricultural development right now. When we discuss about sustainability in agricultural development, there are three factors that we have to focus on. Those are environmental, social, and economic factor, because each factor is interlinking and interdependent. And over the years, sustainability of agricultural system is often present in the literature review as the capacity of this system to be maintained over time. And such a vision tends to limit sustainability as static concept. However, the environmental or socio-economic factor has always been changing over the course of time as resource become scarce or market and value chain shift toward a new direction. So whenever one factor was changing, the other factor will evolve in order to sustain the system itself. Therefore, the best approach for sustainable agricultural development is to think of sustainability as dynamic rather than static concept. And the research objective. The objective of this study is to challenge the static concept toward sustainability and propose and oppose one, the dynamic concept, where sustainability is ensured when the system are able to change and innovate to adapt to their environment and even achieve better efficiency for the use of their resource. And also to examine the change of farming system and innovation in order to develop better understanding toward sustainability of agricultural system in developing country. And Cambodia was chosen for the case study. Next, methodology. The study was conducted around Tunle Sap Lake Zone, which is the biggest cultivation area in Cambodia. And Siem Reap province was purposely selected for this study because it is one of the main agricultural production area and has also developed rapidly in terms of urbanization, socio-economic, agriculture, and also the environment. And first group discussion with community leader and local people was conducted in order to get some inside information about the change in their local environment and socio-economic. And that information then later used to create the guideline for more in-depth interview with individual farm household. Then 50 farm households were selected for the in-depth interview about the change in their resource, production orientation, household activity, and economic and social strategy then and now. And then farm typology were constructed based on those information from the household interview. After that, the evolution of farm household were carefully examined in order to determine the factor that influence the transformation of the farming system and innovation. Then result and discussion. The result of this study had identified 5 major distinct farm types currently existing in the region. Each type developed various innovation innovative strategy based on their results in response to the modification of the environment and socio-economic to ensure their sustainability. And those 5 types are: type 1 is the subsistence rice-based farming with low resource endowment, and they are mainly depend on off-farm activity like construction and migrant worker. And the second type is subsistence rice-based farming, but with medium resource endowment, and their income mainly generate from non-farm activity. And the third type is the commercial farming with low resource endowment and heavily rely on farm income and mainly grow only rice together with vegetable. And the fourth type is also the commercial farming, but with medium resource, and they grow various type of crop, including rice, vegetable, and cash crop. And last type is the commercial farming, but also with high resource endowment, and they mainly grow rice and cash crop. And around 20 to 30 years ago, there are only a few types of farm type existed in the study area as the consequence of Khmer Rouge regime, in which everything was abolished, including wealth and also property right. And the current 5 types has evolved from those few farm types because they are dramatically changing in socio-economic in the area. As you can see in the figure about the evolution of farming system from the distant past until present, there are a big change during Khmer Rouge regime, which the state owned everything and everyone collectively cultivated rice. And after the Khmer Rouge regime end in 1980s, the government redistribute farmland back to household based on their family size, and everyone were relatively poor at the time. And subsistence farming is the dominant the dominant farming system from 1980s to 1990. And then later in early 2000, the government had started to build a new infrastructure in order to attract tourists to the province where Angkor Wat was located. And it is a very big tourist attraction site, and that led to the boom in economic activity and also diversification in every kind of activity, both in urban and rural area. And some family had changed to from subsistence to commercial because there are new road connecting farmer to the market. And the innovation is also an important factor that help farmer adapt to those change in their surrounding. And the farmer in the area adopt new innovation to deal with those constraints and risks in their farming system. And for example, some farmer has adopted mechanization in response to the labor shortage and high labor costs, which are caused by the booming in the economic activity in the city center. And similarly, they also change from broadcasting to transplanting to deal with the constraint. And some family also adopt like short-term duration variety of rice to minimize the risk that presented by the change in environment, specifically is the water availability in the Tonle Sap zone. Overall, the results suggested that farming system may change or evolve to new type whenever there were change in their environment, economic, social factor as an adapted strategy. And the study also undermined the importance of innovation as an enhancing tool, which were used to address key challenge and promote sustainability dynamically as environment and socio-economic factor change in a very fast pace more recently and in the future. So the conclusion, sustainability of agricultural systems should be viewed as dynamic where farming systems were able to adapt to the change of their surrounding with appropriate technology and innovation rather than try to resist it. And the policymaker should conduct the study about local transformation in more detail before promoting any type of innovation to farmer rather than because the different region did not necessarily transform in the same direction. And that's all. Thank you everyone for your paying attention.
So good morning, everyone. I'm Mai Xiong from the National University of Laos, and I'm a graduate student from Montpellier Supagro. So today I'm going to share one of our recent research on understanding the decision drivers that threaten the conservation effort among the Hmong community living in the national park in Laos. So the Nam Et Pulei is a national park in northern of Laos, covering 4,000 square kilometers within three provinces of Hua Phan, Luang Prabang, and Siang Khouang. It is one of the most important biodiversity sites in Laos PDR and has been a focus of activity implemented by the U.S. nonprofit organization called Wildlife Conservation Societies, or WCS. However, its biodiversity is threatened by the hunting and cattle raising activity of the local communities that are living around, including the three Hmong village that we study called Wom Phat, Nam Neun, and Long Hua Pa, which are located in the corridor between the east and then west part of the national park. So since 2017, the WCS has partnered with a local company called Saffron Coffee to plant high-value coffee trees as a livelihood alternative in the expectation that this will reduce the existing threat to the corridor area as an incentive for conservation. Each participating household must sign a community conservation agreement with Saffron that link the coffee price they receive up on the harvest and to their adherence to regulation that prohibit illegal hunting and cattle raising and agricultural activity inside the national park. So our research question is to understand the decision driver that lead to livelihood choice damaging to the conservation in the three Hmong community, and see how this might be ameliorated. The research question that we try to address, the first one is which group in the village, like age, social status, sex, that engage in the poaching and then agricultural expansion, and what are their primary motivation to do so? Who manage the land use planning at the village level, and to what extent are people decision influenced by the action or decision-making process of the others, and who are the main influencers? Which group could be target for early adoption? and how readily would people, including poor households, adopt the compliant conservation enterprise. And the methodology we use is that we spend 2 nights per village to stay in the village, and then we interview the relevant key stakeholders. So the research process was iterative and used qualitative ethnographic methodology rather than using a standard formula in each village. So the study team built on the learning to modify the approach by revise the survey instrument and each day one by one village, and then test new hypotheses in order to maximize the quality of the information. So the survey instrument and procedure we use, firstly we stay in the village, and then we organize a meeting with the village official to introduce the objective of the study and to build trust with the villagers, and then make appointment with the focus group for the next day. And then we have focus group discussion with the male group, female group, the poor, and then the young people in the village. And also with the individual interview with the key person, especially for the crime leader in each village. And also we do transit work around the village to see their activities. So the result, the first one, the trend in the demand for land by land use zone. Since the current land use planning, we can see that in the 3 villages, there is a 4 type of land use: upland rights, village use forest, like a private land, and then grazing communal land. So we can see that the land use planning are not followed in the 3 villages. Mostly the trend of demand is increasing, except village forest, use forest that decreasing because they turn the forest to upland rights. So the land use planning are not followed in these 3 villages due to the rapid growth of population. So they need more land for the upland rights, and then the expansion of the cattle numbers, because the community cattle raising area is too small comparing to the numbers of animals. And community land being converted to private land, especially in Long Ngopa, because they turn many private village forest land to grazing land. So most of the agricultural expansion was for rice production and occur inside the village use forest, not inside the park, but exception for the Long Ngopa that they have some opium user that they grow opium or poppy inside the national park. So these households are not allowed to grow coffee by the village leader because they often the regulation of the park and also of the village. So if we look for the motivation for upland rice and cattle production, the deforestation and upland rice, they need to open new land for rice due to the population pressure, which have reduced the crop rotation for the upland rice, and also for the lowland paddy rice yield is quite low due to the insufficient water. And it is also a cultural leisure, particularly among the women, because the more women, they say that they prefer to do the upland rice because upland rice they can grow associated crops, and then they can harvest many production in the same area. So about the motivation for raising large number of cattle, we can see that the trend of the animal since 2015 until 2020, we can see the increasing number of the cattle is very important. Like especially in Wongfat, the number of cattle is increased by double. So primary reason for to raise more cattle is economic. Since there is a high demand market from Vietnam and then China, which is close to the area. And as well as the economic reason, there is also a strong social status in the Hmong culture. with only large numbers of cattle, since it ensures that for the parents to ensure that one son can slaughter many cattle during the funeral of the parent, which serves the purpose of firstly allowing the soul of the dead person to take cattle to the afterworld to be raised or used in time of hardship. And secondly, ensure that the funeral ceremony will be well attended and then the guests are well fed. So when we try to estimate the income of the household in 5 years, so the different income for the household from different sources, we can see that the main source of the income still come from cattle. So if a family only in average they sell only 2 cattle per year, so they can earn only 20 million kip. And some family have more cattle and sell more than that, so they can have more income than that. And for the red mushroom is one non-timber forest product that have very significant income also for the community, which in average one household can earn around 10 million kip per year, and some large household who have more members, they can have up to 40 million kip per year from the red mushroom. And compared to the coffee, where the WCS try to promote to raise income, so by estimate the return from the saffron company, so annual income for the household only 8 million or a bit more than 8 million. So there is also conflict between the cattle grazier and then red mushroom collector in the village. The issue is that the wealthy cattle owners are unwilling to invest in a forest and fencing in designated cattle raising zone in communal land, since they often hold considerable influence with the village authority. At the same time, the poor households are being marginalized as cattle owners take communal land and leave them without the insufficient resource. So the problem is that the more they have cattle, the more they will burn the area for promote the grass, which is also encourage the movement of the cattle inside the national park, and also facilitate the access of the hunter to the park. And this also reduce the potential of income for from the red mushroom for the red mushroom collectors. So regarding the poaching in the area, during our visit, the local people, the villagers, said that they are no more hunting in the area, since the park have a strict rule and then prohibit illegal hunting in the area. But according to the data from the national park, we can see that along the year they still have some spring snare, what we call traps, and then some anti-pig camp that inside the park. So the common method for hunting are gun, snare, and trap. So hunting is widespread among all the sections of the community and undertaken for food and recreation purpose. So hunting is encouraged by cultural affinity to consuming wild meat and unwillingness on the part of local community and crime leader to sanction or the offender, and the low conviction rate for those who are caught by the authority inside the national park. So we can see in the right hand box here that one crime leader in Namur said that I would talk to them about it, but I wouldn't take any punitive action because that would create disharmony within the village. So and also according to the SMART report, more than 200 people that are being caught inside the park, but for illegal activity, but only 17 were given warning and 31 were fined, and the rest are still pending. So this is also a problem for the park. The typical hunter is male, marriage and age under 40, and hunts in a group of 15 and 20 people. And they hang inside the park in dry season in a high elevation area where the oak tree fruits attack wild pig and deer. So hunting is important for nutrition. So we can see that during the exercise, we can see that source of protein in the village is mostly from the chicken and then the small animal that they raise by themselves. But also one important part is from natural resources like the fish, red scale birds, and then other small animals. So the influence on the decision making at village level, the most influence people in the village are village head and authority, which are under the party. They take responsibility for implementing the land use planning and ensure that the livelihood of the people. And for the Hmong community, the clan leader also have a influence in the community. So large clients have more influence at the village level, while those with fewer families have less influence. For example, in Nong Wapa, her client, his leader, he said that even though I'm a new home, I am only limited influence in the village because her client only has 12 households in the village. The village has 160 households something. So since political and clan leader have the large number of cattle, they are unwilling to take measures to reduce cattle grazing inside the park. So this is a conflict of
Miss Yang, sorry, the time is up now. We're gonna move for the next presenter. So sorry for interrupting.
Oh, okay.
I have a presentation for the first part is about coffee. When I observed the coffee farmer in Indonesia, and this is about the GI coffee farmer. So I estimated which one factor that really influence deeply for the coffee farmer to contribute to the value-added coffee farmer, namely single origin, whether the individual social factor and economics or the collective service among the farmer groups. Okay, continue. This is my presentation framework. I have a background of research, and then coffee farmer current condition, research method, research and result and discussion, and then conclusion. So basically, this one, the condition of the farmer in Indonesia, particularly in my observed region, because coffee is very important for our country. It is like one of the highest export value for Indonesia, and for the worldwide, we have the fourth position of the country that export in the world. So basically, from year by year, year to year, Indonesia have a lot of improvement of coffee production, and mainly of our production is Robusta coffee, and the second one is Arabica coffee. And because of this high dependency on the export market, we need to do something to protect our market, because in the previous case, in the previous cases, we have some cases that really disrupt our export market, such as the claim problem for our several brand of Indonesia coffee, like Coffee Gayo and Coffee Toraja, which were claimed by another company, another country company. So in this case, we cannot export because we already have a ban from the export market due to the claim problem. So in order to solving this kind of problem about the claim, the branding claim from another company or another countries, so our government issuance the geographical indication policy. So basically, the GI is to the function of GI is to make coffee more exportable, recognizable, trustworthy for the consumer around the world. So that's why the consumer can acknowledge that this coffee is come from Indonesia, not come from another company or another countries. So we can maintain the export market, which is our highest economic value for the coffee. So during the implementation of GI, we have one of the GI which is in Bandung district in the West Java province. We have Java Pranger coffee. So this is one of the GI, one of the biggest GI in Indonesia, GI coffee. But during the implementation, we have some problem about implementing the GI because we can take a look at the number 4. We have a less collective action within the farmer. So basically, to implement GI, at the beginning of the part, government invite the farmer leader. So from all the territory on Bandung district, they invited the farmer leader to do like a FGD, focus group discussion, to discuss about the urgency of GI and then how to protect GI, and then proposing the GI protection book. And at least at the end of the day, we have a GI label consisting of 11 regions. So within the Bandung district, we have 11 regions that can use a GI label, GI Java Pranger coffee. But however, because we have a very wide region, we cannot maintain about the quality of GI because this less collective action within farmer group. So because of the collective action that is really less, we still have a very low price for the smallholder farmer, because basically the smallholder farmer is a cherry supplier. They don't have any added value to improve their economic value for their coffee production. So basically they always depend on the exporter to supply their coffee production, red cherry production, as much as even below $1 for each kg. So that's why based on this problem, we need to move forward. Why our GI cannot improve the economic value for the farmer? And this is basically the time schedule when the exporter come to Bandung district, and then farmer can export to the supplier of exporter. So basically during April to September, this is the period of farmer harvest. And then during May and August here is the period of exporter as absorb. So exporter only come to Bandung during May and August, May until August. So before May or after August, they already left Bandung to starting export their coffee commodity. So in case farmer have harvested in this period or this period, it means that in case they don't have any added value or processing coffee, they will be very tough to earn more economic value. So that's why here in the research, I propose some new agenda or development to develop the GI within the narrow scale. So instead of, rather than developing GI at the whole scale at the 11 region, we propose farmer to develop the GI at the lower scale. Each region they develop the GI, so that's why they can have more sustainability and then more social capital. So within the group they can building the attribution and then the trust to maintain their quality of GI. So this is the concept of the narrow scale of GI. So basically we have 11 at the whole area, 11 region, but in this concept we have more localized GI coffee, or namely SO coffee, single origin for each region. So this is the territory that I have observed for region Malabar, Tilu, Java Perinca, and Kopi Puntang. I observed 4 regions. And afterward, they already developed the GI. This is one of the GI, and then this is the trademark and the packaging of their development. So the question is how farmer could adopt this narrow scale GI, and which factor that will be determined more to contribute farmer to adopt this GI in the narrow scale. Whether it's a social economic factor or collective action, which one is better in contributing to adopt the GI? So this is my research method. Basically, I starting the observation with the in-depth interview and continue with the logistic model. And afterward, I looking forward for finding the policy recommendation through AHP analysis. And then we have 134 farmers that observed in this research. And the last one is how to find the recommendation of strategy to develop more about GI in a narrow scale. So this is the variable that I use for the logistic model. 11 regions start from GI knowledge until the satisfaction of farmer. And this is my estimated recommendation of strategies: farmer institution, financial, until technology support. Which one is really need for the farmer? Which is the priority to improve TGI in a narrow scale? So the result, we have some finding here. Basically, based on our finding, the socio-economics factor is really important, but this is not much more important than the collective action. So it means that when farmers want to develop GI within the area and within the group, they need to to build or establish the collective action first, because the collective action is the one that can contribute to the knowledge and to the sharing of the machine and sharing of the marketing as well. So this is the previous collective action at the whole scale. So basically, local government acted as the external body. So it means that the local government have very less contribution to support the GI at the whole scale previously, because they have no budget allocation to the GI member, and they have also less promotion. So because of this irregular support from the government, we have a really huge problem to maintain the quality of GI, because we have no legal sanction applied, and then there are more external free rider and misuse of the GI. So that's why this is a question for the GI effectiveness. So this is the previous case when I observed why the GI at the whole scale is not effective anymore. So after that, this is the logistic that I observed. Basically, we have some variable that really important or influence how farmer want to adopt a GI. And we have GI knowledge that influence the farmer, household size, source of income, the age of farmer that influence inversely. So it means that if farmer have more age or older, they will not include in the GI. So credit liability, and then availability of adopter, neighborhood, collective action, and then extension support. So this is the variable that really influence farmer to adopt the GI in the narrow scale. Okay. However, the particular variable is collective action, because within the collective action, within the group, among the groups, they can have like interdynamic connection with generated social capital among the group. And this social capital can grow because some of proximity, and this proximity can establish the collective action. And when I observe how farmer can develop collective action and what function is the collective action, so basically the collective action is purpose to provide some a support system, like a group support system, and another one is a sanction control group. It means that we have a support and a sanction to control the quality of the GI that provided by the group. Like the support system, like seed and fertilizer, pest control. So each farmer group every week they need to control in all the member of the farmland to check about the pest control, and then post-harvest group, and also quality assurance and branding and marketing. So among the group, they can have a support system like this to brand, to marketing their what is their product, and then another one they can have a sanction control group to maintain that, make sure that there is no one single member that will not what is that will not avoid to implement all the attribution of the GI. So this is the like the machinery and the facilitation among the group that can be used together. And then the last one is about how to improve the GI in the next stage. So basically, this is the expert statement that the farmer need to be supported in the institution improvement. So within the group, the farmer group need to improve a lot. And then after that, each individual farmer should understand about the skill, technical skill improvement as well, and supporting the financial access to the group to access more, to make them easily access the machinery by credit or something, and also the technology, and the last one is marketing support. And this is the conclusion. It means that we have some conclusion here. Okay. Okay, this may be a just short presentation for the second paper of mine. Okay, this is the impact of climate change, as you said. Basically, this is conducted in Central Java in Indonesia, in Temanggung Regency, to observe what is the impact of climate change and how the farmer adapt to the effect of the climate change impact. Okay, this is the background of my presentation, and then this is the problem statement. Basically, the climate change is very worsening the agriculture of Indonesia, because we have really unsure about the climate, and sometimes it's very heavy rainfall, or sometimes it's very hot season like that. So in terms of avoiding that one, we have to do something, and in this time we will look forward how the farmer can avoid the impact of climate change in the tobacco commodity. So based on Heliana, tobacco belongs to the commodity which is very sensitive to the climate change, especially in the increase of rainfall. So basically, when we are entering the rainfall season, we should be prepared that this rainfall can impact deeply to our tobacco commodity, because tobacco is very sensitive when there is a lot of, there is amount of water flow to the soil, and there is like a little fluid. It will be very worse for our tobacco plantation. So here is the country that have some risks at the climate change, and one of them is also my country, Indonesia. So that's why we need to be prepared to avoid this worst impact of climate change. And this tobacco, and yes, basically tobacco have a high contribution to our employment, because Indonesia is still economic based on agriculture, so that's why tobacco is one of the highest employment for our country. And then in this research, I observed two main regions of Indonesia tobacco production. So this one is Ngadirejo region, and then Kleduk region or sub district. Ngadirejo basically accounted almost 18% of the total production of Indonesia, which has about 0.85 ton per hectare. So the second was a Kludung sub-district as the second highest production, accounted 14% of the total production. So basically these two regions have some challenge of the climate change, have some issue because of the rainfall. We here I have two figure here. The first one is about tobacco productivity, and the second one is about the average monthly rainfall during 2013 until 2017. So we can have a look here. The inverse, what is that? The inverse number. When the tobacco productivity is high, it means that the rainfall is decreased or low. So in case the rainfall is high, getting higher, like in 2016, our tobacco productivity is very low. Our tobacco production is very low, like this. So based on this figure, we need to have some solution how the farmer can sustain their tobacco production, and how they manage to adapt in this climate change impact for their tobacco production. So here we also have some phenomenon, at least at the beginning of the 2017. Yes, the beginning of the 2017, we have some we have some reduction in rainfall. So we have some reduction in rainfall, but we also have some improvement of the tobacco productivity. So in this case, this is assumed that natural factor do not fully affect the production, the productivity of the tobacco, but the non-natural factor also contribute to the increase of productivity of tobacco in Ngadirejo and Kludung sub-district in 2017. So basically, when we have a look at this, it means that we have two factors here: the natural factor impacted by the climate change, and then the non-natural factor that can sustain the farmer to still do production of tobacco. And here is a research method. I conducted the research by in-depth interview and also followed by logistic regression. And then the proportion of sampling is I observed 96 farmer, and it is the variable that I use for the logistic regression. So this is the last part, is about the result and discussion. Okay, among the six variable here, we have the most contribution that can make farmer to adopt to do adaptation of the climate change. So here is the variable that really really influence farmer to make a adaptation of the climate change. The first factor is about the experience of the farmers. So the second one is about the location. When a farmer have more experience in years, they could have more adaptability on the climate change, about 1.156 times higher than the farmer that have a less experience. And then also the location. When farmer have a location within the Ngadirejo and the Kludung district, compared to the other region, they will have more adaptability, about 9 times higher than the other regions. So this is the first, this is the important part of this research about farmer adaptation to the climate change. So basically, based on Alain Mayu, climate change has an important role and significant influence on agriculture commodity production. So tobacco farmer claim that production during the high rainfall usually only produce 50% compared to the production when rainfall is commonly low. So that's why the farmer needs to do adaptation. So here is some adaptation that conducted by the farmer in this region. So to conduct the adaptation, farmer usually do kind of improving irrigation channels as much as 47%. And second one is replacing the input and technological support. The technological support is like when they consider to use like a smartphone or smart agriculture, and then also to consider about the weather estimation and weather forecasting to support their forecast of crop planting. And the last one is about harvesting earlier, or we can say time mapping cropping. So it means that the farmer can harvest earlier prior to the high rainfall. And then the second one is about farmer mitigation. We have some mitigation conducted by farmer here. The first one is to accelerate or delay tobacco planting depending on the rainfall condition. So when the rainfall is very huge, very heavy, they could delay first, or they can plan previously prior to the climate change. Prior to the high rainfall happen to their farmer. So the second one is reduce the area of tobacco planting, and then the third one is change the type of tobacco varieties, and the last one is widen the distance each plant of tobacco. So give them a space is very important to sustain from the water in the soil. So this is the conclusion that we have. It means that the increase of the rainfall during 2060 due to the climate change has a decrease in the has the lead to decrease the tobacco productivity for the farmer. And then due to this climate change, farmer have some some conduction some program as like adaptation and the mitigation. The mitigation and adaptation taken by a tobacco farmer today based on each individual experience during tobacco cultivation. So it means that the experience really determine a farmer whether they could solve the condition of climate change or not. They can make it earlier or delay to plan the tobacco production. And then the last one is about the farmer conducting self mitigation and adaptation by the to the climate change by the performance of technology. So it means that right now Indonesia have facilitated some technology to give information about the climate change. About the weather forecasting, and then about the estimation of the high rainfall. So that's why right now farmer can little bit avoid the worst of high rainfall to maintain their production in tobacco community. So that's all from my presentation today. Thank you very much.
Thanks. I hope you're all well. I'm going to start off today with a bit of an overview. I know that a lot of listeners may not be working at the level of food systems particularly, and maybe in something more specifically agricultural, but I'm going to kind of place myself in that, give us some background, and then discuss a bit of my project and what I'm using this system and this database approach for. So we're going to start off with, let's see, there we go. Just a quick overview of food systems in general. We're all probably quite aware that it's a complex system that includes several different aspects, such as our production and agriculture, specifically starting our kind of food cycle, food chain, then going through processing and transport, retail markets, consumption, all the way through waste and recycling back into our production system. So this is part of what makes the food system complex. And we're going to focus a bit more on the production and agriculture side of it, as our session is kind of about agriculture systems. But I also don't want us to forget the larger context of the other aspects of the system that production and agriculture also depends on and effects. There are also several external drivers of food systems, and we know about many of these that directly impact the way we do production and agriculture, climate change, globalization, trade, politics, and culture. So I just want us to keep those in mind as we zoom in particularly on this production and agriculture section, which we all know has several different inputs. And depending on how you are producing food, you have several different things that you need, including soil and water, land, certainly labor, different types of energy and equipment. And one of the challenges that we face right now in agricultural production specifically is that the role of agriculture, as you see here in this light green area, these bars, the role of agriculture is greatly exceeding our safe planetary boundaries. So this is a representation of 100% being a safe planetary boundary. And of all human activities in this dark bar, you see that agriculture contributes a large proportion of our impacts on the planet from all human activities, and particularly our nutrient flows and biodiversity are greatly exceeding safe spaces for human capacity to continue to produce in the way we do. So we know we need to change the way we do agriculture. And as many of you are probably aware, there are many different ways to do that. And I'm going to focus in specifically on using novel food products and how we can incorporate those into a larger system of diets and to be able to better produce food with lower impact, particularly on these areas of nutrient flows, water use, and land use. So my supervisor, Dr. Hanna Tuomisto, wrote a paper and has been quoted to say that not only do we have to change the way we do production, but to meet at better, more sustainable boundaries, but that population growth and rising incomes will mean that people will want to continue to eat livestock products, which are one of our most impactful food products in general. And so we're going to need to find new and better ways to produce proteins in particular and livestock products as well. So I'm going to focus in on novel future foods, which are alternatives, and we're going to talk about whether or not they are more or less sustainable or less impactful alternatives to our traditional animal source foods like chicken, pork, beef, milk, etc. So some of these foods include insect proteins, some include algae and kelp, and also cultured meat in particular is something that I'm going to use as an example of how we can change an agricultural production system in a way that allows us to produce proteins in a way that's less impactful. So we also have the production of novel food products, which is a way to lessen the impact of those products. And we'll talk about those in the next slide, but just to show you a bit more of the background of how cellular agriculture works, in case you may be more familiar with traditional agricultural production. This process is taking cells from an animal stem cells and using a bioreactor and different media to grow fibers on basically tissues in such a way that provides edible product. And this edible product is it would be virtually the same as the pork product you may get in the store. It's just grown in a lab. And why, you might ask, we should even do that instead of just changing our traditional agricultural methods to be less impactful. Well, it's because it's been found that these traditional products have, in general, fewer environmental impacts. So these traditional meat source products have large, especially greenhouse gas emissions and land use. So cultured meat doesn't exactly match up for energy use because, as you can see, it's very technological. So it does use a lot of energy. And if you can find ways to reduce that energy use, you'll be playing in the same ballpark as some of our plant-based protein impacts. But specifically when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions, these cultured meat alternatives provide us with an opportunity to produce high quality protein food product that does not have the same impact as some of our more traditionally grown food products, as well as the lower land use possibility. Now, these are just possibilities, but it's a way to think about how we would change a certain type of production to produce nutritious and healthy food in a way that allows us to have fewer environmental impacts. So the part that I maybe skipped earlier was a discussion of why we should even be thinking about these types of novel foods. And it's because on a global level, again, talking about a healthy boundary in a different way for not just the environment, but for people and human health, we on a global level consume what has been shown to be a lot more meat than we should be. And this means that to reduce that is the first step, and then to produce it in a better way would also help us meet safe planetary boundaries outside of health boundaries. But I also want us to keep in mind that this is a global level and that it varies by region. So this was the global level of how we maybe need to, the 100% showing our safe boundary, and we need to reduce meats and starchy vegetables, particularly in places like North America and Europe. This needs to happen because healthy diets are not being met because we're exceeding the intake of several of these types of, this is red meat and chicken and eggs. But it's very different in other parts of the world. And I want us to keep that in mind as we're all probably from all over at this conference. So this includes different places like fewer starchy vegetables in Africa, or really very different outlook in South Asia, for example. So I just wanted us to keep that in mind. But to be able to ask questions about how we produce these things better and how we can include novel foods and different types of more sustainable protein alternatives in a diet, I want to be able to ask these questions, and I need a database of food products to be able to do that. So I'm going to show you a little bit more about how I produced such a database and where I will go with that to be able to see what possibilities using novel food products like cultured meat and more sustainable protein alternatives has for a more sustainable diet and production system that feeds people healthy food. So to be able to do that, to create a database that investigates novel foods and diets, I need to, as I just showed, have very localized data. And this is even personal consumption data from national health consumption databases. What's also really important is cultural aspects. So portion sizes, average intakes, and the types of food people eat in certain places. So I'm here sitting in Finland. We eat very different things than folks sitting in Thailand, for example, or even in other parts of Europe. So you have to have very localized and cultural data. It's also important to have price and availability data, because if the food is there, we also need to be concerned if people can purchase it, not just that we're producing it better. And I think that's an important aspect. And then, of course, our maybe most important variables to consider when creating a database to ask these questions about what prospects novel foods have in diets are the nutritional and the environmental aspects. And the nutritional data includes macronutrients like fats and carbohydrates and sugars, and then also micronutrients, things like iron and zinc and these kind of smaller vitamins that you would need vitamins and minerals that you would need in a healthy diet. And then finally, environmental impact data. And most existing databases that ask these types of questions for human health and sustainability of diets and food systems in general focus almost exclusively on greenhouse gas emissions. But I want to make sure that we include these other aspects like land use, water use, and some other environmental impacts that are also really important to show that a food system and a food production system is producing food in a way that is less impactful to the local environment and the global environment at that matter. So my current project is to gather this data together into a multi-dimensional database that incorporates these different aspects that I just discussed: health, sociocultural, economic, and ecological, and then also brings in new data from these novel foods like the cellular agriculture that I discussed. It includes nutrition, environmental impact, and price if possible. So what that will show us is a better picture of the various types of things we can use to ask questions about what really makes a sustainable diet and how that diet itself fits inside of a larger system, a food system, and the agricultural production system that provides the foods for these diets. Because as I showed in the beginning, all of these things are connected in the larger food system picture. So we need to consider all of these. And I have an example of a previous database that has been used in French data. And this is a database that includes several of these different dimensions of sustainability, as I showed you before. And it combines, yes, thank you. It combines these into a database that allows the authors of this paper particularly to ask questions about what role different alternatives to currently produced unsustainable products can have in a diet and in a larger food system, because this includes the nutrition, the environmental impact, the culture, the economic, many of these aspects we need to consider when we are consuming food, but also as we're producing food. So I just have one more part here where I won't go into this aspect because I wanted to touch on the database and how important it is to consider the different parts of the system. But from this basic background of gathering all of this data, my next step is to do a diet optimization where I model what the lowest impact environmental foods can look like given certain constraints. So make sure we're hitting nutrition and cultural acceptability constraints to give modeled diets that show us the amounts and types of foods to be consumed in an optimized diet, in a diet that is the lowest environmental impact possible while still meeting our nutritional and cultural constraints. So this is where I will use this database that I discussed here to be able to model diets. And the next step, if I were to go on now, would be to show you what these diets look like and how we would incorporate such foods in a way that lowers the impact of the agricultural production system through consuming these novel or sustainable protein alternatives. And that is where I will end it today. And I want to thank you for your time, and my supervisor, Dr. Hanna Tuomisto, and my lab here at the University of Helsinki. Thanks.
So, hello and welcome. I'm going to present a study that I did together with my colleagues. And the project evaluates the potential for carbon sequestration and climate change mitigation through change of practices of coffee production in southwestern Ethiopia. And before I dig into the details, a few words about me. My name is Sebastian Penchek. I have a bachelor in environmental planning from Roskilde University in Denmark, and I'm now studying climate change at Copenhagen University. I work mostly with European policies on agriculture and environment, but I have a strong interest in developing countries, and hence I did this project about Ethiopia. And I'm currently writing my thesis about Thailand, actually, about the spillover effect of the shift from domestic production of feed for poultry to importing it from abroad. But the focus of today's presentation is a project that I did last winter with my colleagues Anna, Areti, Lucas, and Vincent under the supervision of Tilde Bergbohm. So let's begin. We consume 10 million tons of coffee annually worldwide, which makes it an important commodity for global economy, especially in some developing countries. In many cases, it is an important pillar for the national economy. And such a country is, for example, Ethiopia, where, according to the United States Department of Agriculture, 34% of the value of all exports in Ethiopia in 2018 was coffee. Coffee Arabica is considered to be an endemic species to the Ethiopian highlands, so it has also a historical significance for the region. Now, the issue is the ongoing climate change. In the last decades, it has been observed that there's a steady temperature increase of 0.2 degrees Celsius per decade. The total annual precipitation is quite stable, but there are changes in spatial distribution and rainfall patterns, and the weather becomes more and more variable from year to year. The impacts of droughts are already high in the north and east of Ethiopia and are projected to get even more severe, amplified by some anthropogenic factors such as desertification. And finally, floods are a risk, the impacts of which are expected to increase due to the changing climate, especially in southern and western parts. Now, coffee plants, and especially coffee Arabica, are very sensitive to climate. And in order to remain of high quality, there's a specific set of conditions that they need to have. Ethiopian coffee must be produced in the altitude of between 800 to 2,500 meters above sea level. The optimal rainfall is between 900 to 2,000 millimeters per year, with clearly defined rain seasons, and the temperature must be within the range of 12 to 32 degrees Celsius. And for this reason, the rapidly changing temperatures and the erratic rainfall patterns threaten the coffee plantations. Therefore, in search for cooler temperatures and more stable climate, it is inevitable that coffee cultivation will be moved to higher altitudes. And according to numerous research papers, this has already been happening for a few decades. The dominant land use type in the coffee growing region of Ethiopia is the so-called Afro-montane forest, where there's little human interference. And this means that in a lot of cases, this will move to deforestation. Deforestation rates are already high in the area, as the second largest land use type in the area is the so-called degraded land. And these are areas with depleted soils with varied degrees of plant growth that have been degraded due to agricultural expansion and fuel collection. And the main driver for agricultural expansion in that area is largely animal grazing, but coffee cultivation is also mentioned in Ethiopia's RED+ strategy as a driver. So it is inevitable that coffee cultivation will have to be moved elsewhere. We know that this is likely to cause further deforestation, leading to soil depletion, and it will have further consequences for the climate. And that this means that this short-term solution of clearing forests and moving plantations there would only make the problem worse. And with that in mind, we asked ourselves the question, what can be done? How can we minimize the damage resulting from this shift? So we developed this research question: how can coffee production practices in Southwest Ethiopia support global climate change mitigation efforts through adoption of agroforestry systems while simultaneously providing benefits for local communities? So you might have noticed that we included agroforestry in the question. And the assumption here is that agroforestry should be a part of the solution, and it's made on a number of grounds. For example, agroforestry has some advantages that counteract the damage that a potential move of coffee cultivation areas would do. And these advantages are carbon sequestration, improved soil fertility, water regulation, erosion decrease, increased biodiversity, and reduced vulnerability to natural hazards. And through our background knowledge, we simply assumed that this would be the most appropriate solution. The geographical area of the study was chosen through a GIS analysis. It is simply the area that fits the criteria of altitude between 800 and 2,500 meters above sea level, and the climatic conditions that are needed for coffee cultivation. And with the research question ready and defined study area, it was time to design the project, what form the project it would take. We needed to quantify climate change mitigation in order to have a solution with quantifiable effects. So we decided that carbon stock in soil and biomass would be the most reasonable parameter. And so in order to get a holistic picture of the issue, we decided to make a comparison of carbon stock on different land use types. On degraded land, native forest, coffee, unshaded monoculture, coffee shaded plantation, and coffee agroforestry. And this was done with the purpose of finding the land use type for coffee cultivation with the largest carbon sequestration potential. And finally, when we have compared all these things, we wanted to discuss the practical matters and implementation barriers for choosing the practice that is most relevant. Because we did not have the means to travel to Africa and collect our own data, the project is mostly a literature review. There is ample literature about agroforestry and land use changes in Southwest Ethiopia, but it has been a little challenging to find reports on carbon stock measurements, specifically for coffee farming systems, specifically in our geography. So for example, for unshaded monoculture, we found no such measurements from Ethiopia. And for that reason, we use estimates from Togo. In case of carbon stock measurement for shaded monocultures, we found only one relevant paper. And since the results of the literature reviews have been presented as ranges, it was not possible in each case to quantify a range. The variation within the ranges depends on local conditions, and they vary within the same type of systems. So the results, perhaps unsurprisingly, they indicate that undisturbed Afro-montane forests have the largest carbon storage capacity within the range of 230 to 514 megagrams per hectare in total. And especially the difference between biomass carbon, between undisturbed forests and other land use types for biomass carbon is the most significant, but there's a difference in each and every category. The numbers could indicate that in some cases, agroforestry and even shaded monocultures could have higher carbon stocks than undisturbed forest, but we went through the methods, we went through the methodology used in all the sources, and we determined that this is a result of using slightly different system boundaries, and the calculations were made on different depths. And within the same study, there was no case where carbon stock of plantation would be higher than the carbon stock of a natural forest. And the last point that is important is that degraded lands have undisputably very low carbon stocks. What do the results mean? They indicate that in terms of carbon storage, it would be most reasonable to leave the forests alone and instead establish agroforestry or shaded monocultures on degraded land, as this would increase the total carbon stock significantly and would be a climate change mitigation measure. Whether it is possible to establish farms on degraded land, I will discuss in a minute. The second priority would be clearing forests to establish agroforestry, but it is not desirable because in these cases, the area would lose at least some of the carbon stock. And a net loss of carbon is not desirable and is not a solution we can promote. And the least reasonable option, as it is perhaps already obvious, would be to clear the existing forests in order to establish monocultures, shaded or unshaded. In these cases, the net loss of carbon is the most significant, both in soil and in biomass. And additionally, it makes the soil further prone to erosion and depletion and puts it at risk of being degraded. So now that we know that the most reasonable option in terms of carbon stock would be to plant trees on degraded lands and do agroforestry, one needs to ask the question, is it actually possible to farm land that has very few nutrients, that is significantly eroded, that is degraded? Establishing monocultures would perhaps not be an option because of the lack of nutrients, because of bad soil. But can agroforestry do that? And the question, the answer, according to literature, is yes, it is possible, but, and it is a large but, establishing such systems is a long-term project, and it takes a long time and large upfront investment from the farmer, to establish it. And farmers, in most cases in Ethiopia, cannot afford having such upfront investments. Therefore, it is absolutely vital that we create some kind of incentives for the farmer, for such systems to be created. Otherwise, the farmers will resort to cheapest solutions, providing the largest immediate profit, which is clearing forests and creating monocultures. And we discussed RED Plus as a tool that could be helpful with such issues. We discussed raising commodity value of coffee through, for example, certifications, for example, bird-friendly or shaded coffee, which unfortunately would incur additional costs related to monitoring and certification itself, and requires a stable market for high-quality coffee, which again requires investments in infrastructure inside of Ethiopia. And in addition to all this, there's the issue of land ownership, which is a big one in Ethiopia. We place this problem outside of the scope of the study, as it is very complicated, but it would need to be addressed in any stage of implementation of any kind of project, as there's no unified system of land ownership in Ethiopia. And there's also a number of other barriers, the know-how related to agroforestry, the competing crops and farming techniques, and especially slash and burn agriculture, which is a cheap method for fertilizing the soil, which is not entirely compatible with agroforestry. So take-home messages. I know I'm a little short on time here. Coffee has a very low tolerance for climatic variation, which means that the Ethiopian plantations will need to be moved to higher altitudes. Agroforestry systems on degraded lands has the largest carbon sequestration potential, and converting undisturbed forests into agroforestry results in a net loss of storage carbons. Establishing agroforestry system requires large upfront investments and is currently not a viable possibility. And for that reason, we need financial support for farmers through any means. And we need to take the issue of land ownership into consideration. Thank you very much. That was what I had today.
Say hello to everyone, and for today I'm gonna talk a little bit on my research thesis, actually, on the consumer attitude toward the insect consumption in Cambodia. Well, for this one, it's actually more like a market research for the insects, for the potential insects consumption in Cambodia. And yeah, I have Petra Kalkoa as my supervisor for this work. So for the introduction here, so far, what do we know about the entomophagy? Actually, like entomophagy is the practice of human eating the insects as, as an alternative source of protein. And this concept is believed to be, like a emerging good prospect that we can use to tackle the risings of the global food demand, which translated to more food that human need. So we actually can do it, but it will be in the expense of the environment. So that's why this concept could start to bring human more food while damaging less environment. This is actually the concept here. And there are actually about 1 million recorded species of insects according to FAO, but out of these 1 million, only about 2,000 species of them are eatable. And humans actually produce insects or extract insects from the wild. Some of them use the tool to get the source of insects from the wild, which we call it the semi-cultivations. And last but not least is a farming, which is very popular, or the main source of the insects here on the market. So what are the common known eatable insect species that we usually see on the market? Like Here I have it such as the lucas, the grasshopper, the radon, or we call it the other way around, the weaver ant, and the tarantula, cricket, which is the commonly seen one, and the water scavenger. And how do we usually consume it? Like people have come up with very creative ideas on how we consume it, but the most basic one that we can see in everywhere, especially in Southeast Asia, such as Cambodia and Thailand, as the freshly served whole insects, and some insects are also served in grounded powder, as you can see here in with the white pocket, and some are even smarter that they convert it into a served package, such as the snack here. And we can also find it in some fancy restaurant, like cooking as like the barbecue skewer, the deep fries or something, which look kind of like appetitable. So why do we actually start eating the insects? What are the motivation behind this? So I come up with like 4 major factors. Like the first one is on the environment, as I mentioned earlier, like because we need more protein, more food, so we need we need more land, we need more feed, we need more waters to cultivate a larger scale of animal meat. So this can be done only in the expense of the environment. And the nutrition volume, some researchers has found out that the nutrition volume in some species of insect is even higher, equivalent to the meat, or even higher than the conventional meat, such as the beef, the pork. So why not eat insects? And it's also like one source of the economic factors, like the commercializations. Like some researchers in Thailand show that like a lot of people in rural areas started to farm the insects, and insect farming is actually like one of the main source of the income. So yeah, it could be a potential on the economic aspects. And last but not least is on the animal welfare. Like in today food productions, there's a lot of protests going on about animal welfare, about how we slaughter the animals or something to get the meat. But for the insects, like especially when coming to rearing the insects in the natures, insects require less space, less food for them. So if we were to farm them, we can replicate their natural condition easily, because like it need less space. So it's very easy for farmer to do it. And I also extracted some experiences from the previous researches on the eatable insects from different countries around the world, and constructed on a graph here. Some of the frequent mentions factors that actually affects the consumption of the insects here are the gender, the age, the taste, the degree of processing, and the household circumstance or household situations. And a lot of them show kind of similar result, especially on the gender and the taste. Like the gender, most of them show that the men are more likely to eat the insects, and I also use this as one of my hypotheses for this research. And the taste, like the results are quite mixed, like some like it, some not, but majority of them like it, such as like the research in Italy, Ghana, and the Netherlands, and the rest of them are like show somehow a similar result among different research in different countries. So what are the actual objective for this market research? Well, the main objective, the first and the main one is actually to determine the consumption's attitude toward the eatable insects in Cambodia. And the second one is to identify what are actually the most commonly eaten species of insects, the reason, or how do they actually think of the concept of eating the insects. And lastly is to determine the motivation or the driven factors that lead them to purchase or to consume more eatable insects. And there's 3 hypotheses that are formulated here. Like the first one is taste of eatable insects is the driven factors for the consumptions. Men is more likely to eat the insects than women. And lastly, if there is a relationship between curiosity and the insect consumptions. So the methodology for this research is for the approach, we use the quantitative method, while the tool, we use the online questionnaire survey. And the participation all of them must be Cambodian. And so far we have collected 178 samples, and the data collection is still going on because this is still a low number. So we expected to have more samples. And we use the snowball method, the non-random one, and for the research area in Cambodia. And we also work with 3 Cambodian universities in order to send the survey to the student and get the response from them. And for the data analysis, I mainly use the Pearson chi-square and the t-test on SPSS and the Excel tool for the data cleaning, entry, and some graphic design. So what are the preliminary results that I have so far? So on the respondent characteristic, you can see here for the gender, they show a very good proportion between the male and female, whereas the age, there's and education, it is a little bit biased toward the middle or the young adult group of between 19 to 30 years old, because a lot of them are the student actually. And yeah, and the education, most of them are in the associate degree and bachelor degree. And as for the occupation and the household income, the result is kind of acceptable or reasonable, because there's no one is very dominant to other. And I also managed to identify the most commonly eaten insect species here, because you can see here on the bottom of the graph, the silk pupae, the rattan, and the cricket are 3 of the most eaten by our responses. Like a cricket got 99.35%, which means a lot of people eat their cricket. And not only these 3 species are the most commonly named species of insects during our survey, but they also named these 3 particular insects as their most favorite species of insects, where cricket got 40% of the respondents as their most favorite insects, following by rattan and water scavengers at 12%. And we also look in the socioeconomic factors that could influence the insect consumptions. We use all of these socioeconomic factors to test against whether they have actually eaten the insects before. And we can see that test gender and age are actually significant, which could also used to accept one of my hypotheses on the taste of the insects, which is the main driver for the consumptions. And I also look further into the gender in order to confirm another hypothesis by using the t-test to test out the male and female versus whether they have eaten the insects. And we can see there, and the mean of the male is actually higher than the female, and the p-value is also lower than 0.5, which is our level of confidence of 95%. So yeah, so through this t-test, we can also accept our second hypothesis of men is more likely to eat the edible insects than the women. We also look into the reasons, like what are actually the main reasons leading them to eat the insects in the first place. Like we can see, like majority of them are actually eaten out of curiosity, which accounted for over half of our responses, following by some of them saying that they eat it because their family member also eat it. This is also corresponds to the literature saying that a lot of people in Cambodia actually eat the insects because of their family, because the last generations of the family member went through the civil war, the famines where there's a shortage of the food. So they have to look into the alternative sources of protein, which is the insects that are available everywhere back then. So I also tested again, used the chi-square test to test this variable, and the result is also significant for the curiosity. So I can also confirm that there is actually a relationship between the curiosity and the insect consumptions. Lastly, I'll look into the perceptions, like how do people actually perceive about the concept of entomophagy. And a lot of the people, they think that the insect is actually disgusting, but this is not actually correspond to the previous result that we have so far, because a lot of them tend to favor the insects, but they at the same time they also perceive it as disgusting. While the other few reasons we can see that, aside from having the insects as food, they're also concerned about the other other perspectives, such as like the animal welfare and the environment. And they eat it because of the taste and the price that I have already shown earlier. So discussions, they are actually the taste of the edible insect is one of the driven factors, which also confirmed by another research in the Netherlands and in Ghana. And there are other research in Belgium and China also indicate that men tend to eat the insects more than women, partially because of the curiosity, and the degree of processing does matter in some researches in the European country, but when it comes to our research, it does not really matter whether it is less visible or in whole form, people still consume it. So in conclusion, cricket, rattan, and the silk pupa are the most commonly eaten species of insects. And there's also some important factors that we have to take into account, such as the taste, the price, animal welfare, and the environment. And so, as I mentioned earlier, this is more like a market research into the eatable insects. So it could be a potential, like insects could be a potential factors in the food industry in the future, because right now they actually have the supply and demand for the insects, but the way that people eat it is very conventional, is very traditional. So with the more innovative concept in the production, in the advertisement, in the preparations, it's actually could be a potential key players in the food industry in Cambodia. And I also have some suggestions for the future research, as to tackle the larger sample size with better proportions of the different age group, educations, and household income, so that we could get a more sample that cover everything that we want you to look into. So thank you so much for your participation, and I also want to thank our university for this piece of work.